What hurts the promotion somewhere along in 2018, when we started off the year, Fight Lab did a great job of promoting a main event. They promoted Dewan Owens fighting for the Fight Lab title, and they did a good job of promoting that fight. I wasn't fully aware of the remainder of the card because they did such a good job of promoting that fight. Somewhere along the line in 2018, promoters went from promoting to just staffing. You would see Facebook posts that said, need a 145er, need a debut, need someone to take on a 3-0. You know, these guys have names. They're not invisible faces. And I know for a fact that the only people that are really looking at this are people in the fight game, the gyms, the coaches. So it's so tedious to have to go back and, you see a post and it's so tedious to have to go back and say, oh man, who is it? It's the person's not a ghost. If you think the person is so tough to match, why don't you reach out to very specific tough people to see if they'll fight them? Because here's what's really happening. They give you these ghost fighters. They say, I need a 3-0. I need someone to fight this 3-0 or this pro beast or whatever. They put these adjectives on top of it and they say, I got some monsters for you. And they give you these adjectives, all right? And that's because they hope that anybody fills the slot because they really don't want to negotiate with anyone who's willing to do it up front. Somebody is out there that wants to fight these guys, but they want something in return for it. My thing is, if you're going to promote a guy as a monster, as a beast, as a demon, as a devil, then why not negotiate? Why settle for the guy who doesn't really know what he's getting into? Staffing a card versus promoting a card, two different things. And if you're going to build a card, build it in 3 tiers in terms of a main event, a main card, and an undercard. It should have 3 levels. Your main event should have 3 fights. Any of those 3 fights could be the main event. If you do it right, if you lose 2, you still don't lose the show. And if you lose 1 fighter, potentially you have one of the other fighters that could fill in for the main event because that fighter's already training rather than lose a main event and bring in a fighter who hasn't been training. Build a 3-tier system, promote the main event, and you don't have to worry about your main card and your undercard. If you have 3 main fights and you're starting your promotion campaign 6 weeks, 4 weeks out, whatever you think is relevant for your area, you focus on those 3 fights, those 6 fighters for the next 6 weeks. By default, because you're probably going to bring fighters from each guy's gym, by default, you'll put the spotlight on those other fighters on the main card and the undercard. And they'll get some rub and some shine and some publicity as well as you continually talk every week. You say, so-and-so's training with blah, blah, blah. And the main event is intact. It remains intact. And I think you still have to negotiate. If you're going to have tough guys fighting tough guys, I think you have to treat them well, negotiate, make sure they're getting what they asked for, and your main event sticks. When you change up things, you change the rules, you change the format. I've had fighters who told me, hey, when we came to fight your guy, we thought it was a championship fight. Turned out to be a 3-round fight. At a show I was at recently, I saw 2 amateur titles on the line. One fight was 3 5-minute rounds, and the other fight was 5 3-minute rounds. And under the same sanctioning body. Just kind of, these are mishaps. And again, the fans don't recognize a lot of this, but it makes the gyms kind of skittish and want to back off. Establish a policy in terms of what you're going to do. A lot of promotions will tell you, oh, we can't do it because the state law says. When I go and look at handbooks and I look at what the rules are, I don't see it. So a lot of what they're saying is a bunch of jibber jabber. They want to put you off. They assume you won't go check it out. I'd rather for them to have something in writing or at least point me to some type of established history that says they're not allowed to negotiate certain ways or they won't negotiate a certain way. Or when they come to the table, we identify how we're going to put this card together, in terms of the fighters from a particular area or a particular gym. And the funny part about it is that a lot of promoters don't want to have these discussions, but yet they criticize fighters for not knowing the business. And part of the problem is you're not doing business with them. That is how they get good at that skill, is that they have to spar with you. All right. And the last thing that promotions do is, or they should stop doing, is stop bashing. Don't bash other promotions. Don't bash the gyms. Don't bash the fighters. I know there have been some situations in 2018 where fighters have come out and they've bashed the promotion, and the promotion had to defend their brand. And I think that's fair. Then to some degree, it gets a little bit out of hand where it's just bashing, where it gets to be almost on a personal level, saying where this fighter's a coward. He really didn't have skill, didn't really have talent, and then the fighter wants to start telling some stories that can or cannot be true. They start saying that, oh, they promised me X amount of dollars, they failed to pay, and words like or phrases like failing to pay is a good way to turn pros away from your show. If you develop a reputation where pros don't get paid, it doesn't go well. And I think instead of bashing, what should happen is the promotions themselves should get back to promoting, not staffing. But while they're promoting, they should create intrigue. In other words, create a general interest in why I need to see this particular fighter or these particular fighters who headline my main event. And I think that's what's missing in the game right now. I think these are the things that are hurting MMA on the local scene overall. Again, the fighters themselves, they're confused about the business. They don't understand training, don't understand how to work and trade. They have a false view of themselves. They feel entitled. Matchmaking, good matches sometimes are just, nobody wants to see too many debuts on a show unless your show is geared toward all debuts and all amateurs, and that's just a format, where you push fighters to the other shows. If there's favoritism, nobody wants to see that. Athletes in general represent your product, so if you have unskilled fighters, it's going to hurt the view of what you put out. Promotions, once again, don't just fill a card. Build a 3-tier system of a main event. Promote the main event. Have an established policy where the fighters themselves are clear and aware of, how you're going to conduct business. And then stop bashing fighters, stop bashing promotions, stop bashing the industry, stop bashing the local commissions, and create intrigue and interest not only in the fighters who are your product, but also in your brand itself. What is your mission statement as a fight company? Hey, look, I am Coach Sess, and you've had Words with the Mad Coach.